Pat Cummins, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Before we get into wrestling, fighting, all that stuff, what is tied to table Bali?
Well, so you're getting into a long story right now.
Let's get into it.
So Tied to Table is it's a company I launched with a buddy of mine, Hubert Hacheski. He's actually my friend from Germany, and we became friends. I was just kind of getting into freediving and spearfishing and that whole world, and
Wow.
which is funny because I think I've exchanged one intense activity for that's like kind of been my trend. I'm just like constant, like, what's the next intense thing I can do? But yeah, we became buddies. We met in San Diego years ago, and just kind of immediately hit it off. And he at the time was working on like a super yacht for some mega billionaire guy, and as a chef, and so we didn't really connect as much as I would have liked. And he was, he's just kind of always jet setting around, and I just was like, this guy's awesome. And
were you a chef at the time or no?
I was not. My younger brother is a classically trained chef, and we've always cooked together. We've always had that kind of interest, but I've never had formal training like that.
Okay.
But I do what I can. So anyway, he hit me up and was like, "Hey, I'm coming to LA. I'm doing a sushi master's course. I need a place to stay. What should I was helping him with find an apartment or something like that. Ended up he actually stayed at the school. They had like little like studios he could stay in. But he planned his trip for I think 10 weeks. And so he had, kind of a week on each end of it. And he crashed with me for those times. And I just was like, all right, but I'm picking your brain. I'm making you dive with me all the time. And, it was just like, it was fun. And on the weekends, I'd kind of like spring him out of his little, like, he didn't have a car in LA. So it was like, it was good. I was like, you're gonna have to come diving with me, and like, I'm gonna get you out of here, but like, we're gonna have fun. We can go out and have fun. I'll show you LA, but like, we're diving a lot. And he's like, all right, because he was in chef mode at the time, and he kind of like he'd kind of been through, I think kind of like everybody does with wrestling, like they kind of are like, okay, I've done this enough, and I want to kind of, you get fed up with it and you kind of set it aside, but I feel like everyone always comes back to it.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
that's
true.
kind of, yeah, that's kind of where he was. And I kind of like, I sparked his love for it. And we started doing, I think it was my birthday, and I went on I just went on like a rod and reel fishing trip with some of my buddies and came back with a couple of nice fish, like bluefin and maybe some yellowtail, think just like couple fish. And he I sent him a picture, and he's like, let's have a party, let's have a birthday party, let's throw down sushi. He's like, I got all these skills, let's go. And I was like, all right. So we just kind of like last minute like, as I'm driving up from San Diego, got on the phone and got all my buddies together, and we threw together a sushi night, and everybody loved it. It was just kind of like our friend group, or whoever, friends of friends. And then but I guess the issue was, it must have cost us like $500. And I'm like, and everybody's like, oh, can you, like, the people that couldn't come because it was last minute were like, can we do that again? Like, sorry, like, we missed it, we saw the photos from it, looked awesome. And we're like, yeah, we'll do it, but you guys are gonna have to pay this time. And that's kind of where it came from. And since then we've done some big events. We've done, obviously we did it in Bali. We did a really big 30-person omakase kind of 8-course menu in the Arts District in LA. at a friend of mine's, kind of business space. And we've just, we book private events now, and we're kind of seeing where it goes. Pretty
And so
fun.
does he do the spearfishing, or you do the spearfishing and he does the cooking? Or is it
Oh
both?
no, we both do it. He loves it. It's just he needed to kind of like, he needed a little kick in the
How do
butt.
you, when you're going spearfishing, how do you like get out there? Do you swim out there? Do you take a boat and jump in? Like, how do you get in there?
Well, like, so yeah, I mean, we could do, there's a couple ways to do it, but for example, last night I was up late last night, and because it's lobster season, and lobster season you usually go at night, which creeps everybody out, And but we went from the shore. We swam out. I don't know, might be maybe like a quarter-mile swim out to a reef. Just kind of, it's like kind of offshore, a little sunken reef, and
At night.
at night, yeah.
Dude, that's crazy.
I know, it freaks
God.
everybody out.
And then you
Yeah,
guys you take it back and you make sushi out of it. I mean, how fresh must that be?
yeah, and it's funny because when Hubert was away, I started getting into cooking and doing little private events here, and kind of like started a little catering company, and I just became known as the seafood guy because, I mean, maybe it wasn't my cooking that was awesome, but it was just like, you can't get fish that fresh,
Right.
I think the food, I think the fish you buy at the grocery store, or even the fish market, is like an average of like 10 days old, and
Really?
it's, yeah, I mean, you think about the long range boats that are out there, fishing, even if, even no matter how it's done, um, they're getting, those fish are getting caught and put on ice on the boat. And I mean, it's like 2 week, kind of like a week to 2 weeks is kind of the average trip on one of those long range boats. And by the time it passes hands and gets to the market, gets to you, it's usually around 10 days old.
Well, even if it's the worst would be like it's not even a real fish right out in the wild. It's just in like a lake somewhere. Like
Yeah,
that's
well, yeah.
probably a lot of that shit too.
If it's, yeah, there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of farm raised stuff, but honestly, like, a lot of farm raised stuff is fresher
Oh,
than
really?
what you can get. But it depends on the diet of the fish, and that kind of thing. And usually it's like something raised in captivity. It's not going to be the same.
Right. Man,
Yeah.
that's cool because I just love hearing about people who have a passion, they go for it like that. And so, I mean, this Bali trip, people go to Pat's Instagram and check it out. It's cool, but it seems like it was like a massive undertaking. I mean, all that went into it.
We did the LA dinner first, and I remember Hubert saying, like, I never want to do this again. This is like, how did you talk me into doing this? Because I mean, it was, we started. I mean, obviously, we're planning things that we might catch. We had no idea, but it was about 4 days out, because that's kind of like the perfect sushi cure time, is like 2, 3, 4 days is, a fish sits on ice. It's going to taste better than if you cut it up right there, right then and there. It's not going to have that. It needs to cure just a bit.
So it can be too fresh.
It could, yeah, it can be, especially if you're eating it raw. So, we had this little window, and it was like, I mean, it was a struggle catching. I think for LA, we did, I think, 7 different species of fish, or, shellfish. And in Bali, we did 9. And, but like, in that little window, it's like, okay,
Better
like, we're
catch
just like,
something.
yeah. And so he is like, he's German, so he's like very regimented, and just like super concerned about, the bottom line, getting everything we need. And he's just like stressed the whole time while we're timing. And I'm just like, it'll happen. Like, I feel good about this, like, we worked really hard, it's like, I have like the weird wrestling mentality about it. And
Right.
he's just freaking out the whole time, like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? And then as soon as we get a couple, couple good like main fish in the bag, he just, like you could see him kind of like relax and be like, okay, like I feel better about this now. Like we can probably make this happen.
Right.
But yeah, no, I mean going to Bali was crazy. It was like travel, it's like a 24-hour travel. And then we're just, I mean, it was nice because he used to live there. He owns a spearfishing charter with a buddy of his.
Bro, this guy sounds like just like everyone has a friend in their group where it's like, dude owns a fishing charter in Bali. Like, what the hell are you talking?
I know.
Like...
And the craziest part is like he's 10 years younger than me. Like he's just like he's like the most worldly guy. Like he's just been like all over the place. And I think he kind of found this place and was like, okay, this is where I'm going to set up shop. I think he lived there for like 3 years.
Yeah.
And just
beautiful there,
at the time, like spearfishing was like life for him, and I could see why. It's very, diving here opposed to diving there is like, so it's different. It's clear water. It's like your typical, like what you would imagine, clear water, beautiful fish everywhere, like that kind of thing. And then you go, then you come back and you got beautiful beach, beautiful people to look at. It's just like just a fun, relaxed culture of Bali. So
yeah, my wife and I went there for a honeymoon. It was awesome.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was great.
So you get it. Yeah.
Yeah. It was beautiful. Well, that's what caught my eye. I'm like, and I didn't mean to go on a tangent there, but it looks cool, man. And it looked like you guys were filming it, and I'm like, oh, Bali's sweet. So yeah, it's like you said, you do a lot of crazy stuff, man. I mean, college wrestler, fighter, now you're spear fisherman. It's like freaking nuts. Yeah. Let's go back to the beginning though, man. I didn't realize that you had 2 other brothers that wrestled. So how'd you end up walking on to Penn State?
I owe a lot of that to my older brother. Because I mean, in I did not have a great high school career. I mean, I was like league champ or section champ, like that kind of thing. And then I was District 3 in Pennsylvania, so it's kind of that's a tough district, and I think the best I did was like 3rd at districts, enough to qualify me for states. And then I went states and was like 0-2, but that was like my junior year, and then my senior year I kind of got banged up and didn't make it to the postseason. But my older brother, took 4th at states in Pennsylvania, like I think he was at 189. Okay. It was tough. It was a tough weight class then. And he was, he kind of, I mean, he didn't walk on, he got like actively recruited, but, their coaches, just because like our coaches had their eye on me just because, he's my brother, and they liked his work ethic and that kind of thing. And then when I didn't make it to the postseason, they kind of were like, all right, I guess, like we don't really want, like, we're not going to actively recruit this guy anymore. And then, but I was just like, hey, I want to come to Penn State. Like, what do I need to do? And they're like, well, we got a spot left. Like, I pretty much filled the last spot they had. And that's funny. Yeah. And
I noticed you call it states. That's a heated debate on Twitter because it's so funny. Yeah. In Illinois, it's state, and I feel like every other state but Illinois and like Iowa, it's like state. So sorry, quick side tangent.
State, yeah, taking state.
Going to states. It's a very East Coast thing, but I think California, it's states too, because Ohio might be the tiebreaker what they go by. But I know Illinois and Iowa, it's state. But anyway, states. Continue. Sorry, brother.
All right. Didn't mean to offend anybody.
No.
Yeah, so I just remember getting to Penn State. And I mean, obviously, this was before the Cale Sanderson, regime and that kind of thing. But I mean, Penn State was always top 5, top 10 team back then. It was early 2000s, and I just remember like walking in, and our recruiting class I think was like maybe the 6th in the nation, as far as like the guys they brought in. And I just remember looking around me and being like, I don't belong here. I'm just like, well, what did I get myself into? And then of course we start like our hardcore preseason training and all that stuff. And I just remember being like, I'm in way over my head, you know, but I knew, I mean, there's one thing I knew is like, I wasn't going to quit. And no matter what, no matter how much I hated it and how much I felt like I didn't fit in and how much it was like a, like such a big challenge for me. Just, you know, I was a 3-sport athlete. I never just like straight wrestled. And, you know, that's what I stepped into. And I stepped into it at this like crazy level. And, you know, I'm getting beat up in the room. I'm getting beat up in the weight room, you know, it's just like, it was way, way different than I ever would have thought. And, it took me, I mean, obviously I redshirted my freshman year. I just, you know, you kind of do that, you're unattached, you know, tournaments and things like that. And it kind of, you get the experience that, you know what I mean? Like you're getting beat up and then you have a little success at an open tournament or, you know, something like that. And it kind of, it's like little battles. You're winning little
Mhm.
battles here and there. And then, so it kind of was like, get the taste of like, okay, like I want to win. And I kind of started to figure out just by my surroundings, like what I needed to do that. And I think wrestling is like one of the only sports where if you just bust your ass, if you work really, really hard, you can get really good at wrestling. And that's just like, it's not really true for a lot of other sports, you know. I think
True. It's
like,
not true for golf, let me tell you.
yeah, right. Like how often have we been out there and just been like, oh, do I
Dude.
suck at this? Yeah. Yeah. But
It's you're
I
right
always
though.
use, yeah, I always use the example of like guys running the 100-meter dash, you know, like in those guys, like everyone, you can work super hard. You can be like the hardest working guy and you'll shave maybe a quarter of a second off your time from like,
Mhm.
you know, going to college to when you're going to go try to, you know, be in the Olympics or whatever. And it's like, man, I've seen the worst athletes that you could, you know, guys that wouldn't even, this is actually a true story, guys that don't know how to hold a baseball bat, you know, like I remember like watching one of the guys that you know I went to school with, and I'm like, why does his swing look so weird? Why he just looks so uncoordinated, something wrong. His hands were backwards. He was like trying to swing it like this. And I was like, oh, but I mean, you put him on the wrestling mat and you know, he worked hard and whatever, and like he looks like I mean, you know, like the man.
Well, in
So
college wrestling, especially, right? Like those first 2 years, you go from it's such an interesting time, right? You have the walk-ons, you have the kids we all grew up knowing how dominant they were, but somehow everyone ends up at these like kind of rinky-dink opens. And like within
yeah,
1 to 2 years of those, like this time right now, November, December opens, you see people win over. You're like, how the hell did he ever beat that guy? But
yeah,
you can
yeah,
make some early college is crazy how
yeah,
much the gains can be made.
yeah, and like I think in any combat sport, any like sport that you know, it's a one-on-one situation, like confidence means everything. And once you kind of, I mean, you see it in MMA all the time, you know, you see guys that are kind of like chipping away and then all of a sudden they have like they string a couple good wins together and it's like they just they start believing in their what they can do. And
Mm-hmm.
it I mean, you see it in wrestling too. You just, you know, like I think every single NCAA tournament, you see that like that guy that's like ranked in the, you know, like not supposed to be winning matches, just like building, like he's like, well, I just beat the number 3 guy, and then just like goes on a tear and just like just like ends
Dude,
up ends up like crushing it.
Mark Branch is the epitome of that. He won the
Yeah,
Nationals as a freshman with a losing record, but then after that, he's in the finals every year. It's like,
yeah,
how did
yeah,
that happen?
yeah, yeah.
Like, how did you not
Because
go back to the losing record? You know,
yeah,
it's fascinating. Tell me about
yeah.
the first time you met up with Tommy Rollins on a wrestling mat.
Oh man, this is actually a good story. So, it was that freshman year that I redshirted. We both redshirted that year, and I think I was at the Ohio State Open tournament, whatever that was, and I remember coming back from that tournament kind of excited because I took third. It was like the best I'd done. And I felt like I was trying to like get a little like approval from my coaches, just a little bit. And like, man, I come back and I'm like, yeah, coach, I took third. It was pretty, I feel pretty good about it. And he was like, what would you lose to? Of course. And I was like, I don't know, this guy, Tommy Rowlands. I don't know. I was like, I don't know. And he like got super serious, looked at me, and he's like, if that's the guy you have to beat. If you want to be a national champ, that's the guy you're gonna have to beat. And I didn't really think much of it, but I remember during that match, like he beat me by 14 points. And like, but I refused to give, like,
Yeah.
And it was like a technical dismantling, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm sure you've experienced this. Like the first time you shoot in on someone's legs and they hip you and you like sit on your ass, you like, you don't like, it was just like another level of wrestling that I had no idea existed. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, because I was used to being the kind of undersized wrestler. And, I was like, oh, this guy's kind of my size. Like, all right, this is going to be fun, like, all right, I don't have to worry about pushing this big monster around the mat. And man, it's like, so I'm confident, shoot in right away. And he just like hips me right to my ass.
Boom.
And I'm like, what? And from that point on, I'm just like, what is happening? Like, I'm just getting torn up. Like, it was ridiculous.
Dude, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, I bumped up one time when I was a sophomore to wrestle like this state champ from Iowa, Mitch Kell. I'll never forget it. All week I was like pumping myself up. Like, I want to go up to 119, coach. Home dual meet, majors me. Like, I'm just like, what? I had no business. None.
Yeah.
None.
Like,
and I'm like,
couldn't
even get like a tie or anything, So
yeah.
So you wrestle Rollins. That's your first match. And obviously the journey of this is long. With Rollins.
Oh, it's very long. Yeah. But the one thing I took from that match is I kind of remembered is he was like ready to tech me. Like, I think that 14-point gap was like for most of the, like most of the third period, I was like sitting in trouble, like getting like the match was going to be over. And I think he was just kind of like, okay, I'm just going to score another couple points and be done with it. But I just refused to give up. I was like, no, I'm not getting teched right now. Like, this is embarrassing. And I just like wouldn't quit. And then, I think a lot of people would have probably bagged it and just been like, okay, like, let me stop this embarrassment. And like, you know what I mean? Like, I'll just lick my wounds and come back another day. But I just like, and I remember it kind of frustrating him that he just like, he couldn't, I think I was like, I got like a reversal like in the end, and like he was just like, what is this kid doing? Like, just give up already,
Right.
And like, it's funny because that kind of became like the theme, I mean, we must have wrestled each other at least twice a year, since that time, like at least 2, 3. I mean, later on in our career, we wrestled each other probably 4 or 5 times a year. But I'd chip away each time, and when my coach sat me down and kind of told me that, like, hey, if you're real serious about, being a national champ, that's really your goal. This is the guy you have to beat. It just kind of like perked me up. And I think the funniest thing about that whole thing is Tommy Rowlands was the #1 recruit in the country the year that I was, that year that I was recruited or not recruited. and like, I didn't even know the kid's name. I didn't even know his name. Like, that's how far kind of like removed from wrestling I was. Like, I was, like I said, I was 3 sports in high school, and just kind of like doing it for fun in the off season a little bit. And, like, I didn't even know what Fargo was. Like, I was just this like dumbass that just was like,
did you even consider starting? Like, would you think like starting was an option for you at Penn State, or are you just doing it like what? Like, I guess when was your turning point where you're like, I can actually win and like make something happen here?
Yeah. When I think probably the middle or like towards the end of my second year in school, I made the decision, okay, this is gonna suck. No matter what I do, this is gonna be really hard. And I just thought, it's gonna be harder if I don't accept it and just, if I'm constantly fighting it and kind of like down about it, it's gonna suck way worse. And I know I'm not gonna quit. I know, I'm gonna stick it out. Why, if I just give like 10% more,
Mm-hmm.
I just thought I'm just gonna try to win every sprint and win every match that we wrestle in the room, every situation that we wrestle in the room. I just kind of flipped the switch and was just like, okay, I'm gonna see where this effort takes me. And when I remember consciously making that decision. It was funny. I remember being, I think in our little like wrestling house and just kind of like sitting back and be like, just kind of like licking my wounds from the day and just being like, I'm not gonna, I can't continue like this. I need something has to happen. Either I convince myself to give up or I just start really busting my ass and accept this position as college wrestler and try to be the best. So
Man.
I I think part of the reason why I made that decision is like this, summer was coming up and I was kind of making the decision of like, do I stay here and just continue to train while everybody goes home and relaxes for the summer or whatever. And that became kind of my mantra. And every summer I improved so much. Like guys would come back towards the end of the summer for camps and things like that. And coaches would be putting us through whatever training afterwards. And I'd just be like I could see guys' faces being like, oh, like somebody's been getting better. Like, what's going on? Like, why is it so
Wow.
hard to take this guy down now? Or whatever. Like, why is he taking it to me? And like, so it was easy. I mean, making that decision was difficult, but it was as soon as I made the decision, I started seeing results right away, and it just kind of like I built that momentum and built that confidence, and then it started immediately paying off. In those open tournaments or whatever the early college, early season stuff, um, and then I think I had my first match at Penn State, and I remember just
At Rec
I
Hall?
didn't at Rec Hall, and I didn't feel nervous, but man, my nervousness showed. Like I was like when you just get tired for no reason and you don't know why, and I was just like, what is happening? I'm in way better shape than this guy, And I was wrestling a pretty good guy. I think it was against Clarion or something like that. I was wrestling, forget the guy's name, but he was pretty good. And but I just I kept it close, but I ended up losing. But I was like hyperventilating and like wheezing at the end. And I'm just like, what is happening? Like I'm in better shape than this, And it made me feel so weird because I was like, I've trained so hard. I've trained all through the summertime, all through the preseason. Like I've been going hard and trying like my best. And how am I like having an asthma attack right now? And it was just nerves, It was like, I'm sure everyone's experienced that at some point,
Oh,
It's just like
definitely.
you get to that a little bigger stage and you're just like, oh God. But
So when you
but
made
yeah,
that decision, would you say it was one, it's an effort thing, and then like after that, how often were you working out? And like were you wrestling with like a coach every day? Like what was your routine?
I mean, especially in the summertime, I knew, like the coaches knew that I was there to train all the time, and they would, I'd be like, hey, I'm available, like let's go, and they loved it, and so yeah, I mean, I was training all the time, and Dave Hart was one of our assistants, and man, he, I think a lot of guys that went to Penn State at that time, like that guy instilled something in everybody. He was just
How
like,
do you mean?
he's just a hardcore guy. Like he would describe it as being a maniac. He'd be like, you got to be a maniac. You just need to show everybody that you're a maniac, and just like, I mean, he would push us really hard, but the stuff he was doing in the room, like he's probably was in his late 30s at the time, or mid late 30s, and just like smashing everybody in the room, just like, and just like putting a pace on that like nobody wanted to, like if we're pairing up guys in the room and nobody's left and he jumps in, like you're just like, oh god.
An old guy could
like
go with college wrestlers.
Oh, dude, he was I think he's still doing it. Honestly, like it's great. My older brother, he coaches at State College High, which is the Penn State's high school, and he's like always hanging out with Dave Hart, and like I'm like, is he still getting in the wrestling? He's like, oh yeah, like he'll just like beat up all the freshmen. I'm like, no way.
Yeah.
Like how old is this? Like it's so awesome.
So he was a big influence on you?
Yeah. And he was kind of, he was like an kind of like the upperweight coach. Wow. But yeah, he was a big influence on me. And I mean, I think he saw what I was doing and what I was, he saw me make that switch, and I kind of became his project a little bit. And I think that's all you really need to show, it's just like, hey, I'm willing to do what it takes to do this. And I think I remember making that decision, but I also, like, I had to hit these little milestones to kind of keep that momentum rolling. I mean, if I wouldn't have, I was fortunate, I guess I should say. Like, I think, there was like guys got hurt, other heavyweight guys would get hurt, or they'd get suspended from the team, or, whatever, that were clearly better than me. And I just kind of like I would just like take an opportunity, like, oh, okay, I'm starting this year, or whatever it was. It was kind of like happenstance, or it was just like, we just didn't have a really good heavyweight recruiting class that year, or whatever. And I just I just matched the opportunity with just, that kind of intensity and willingness to do whatever it takes to be good.
Isn't it crazy? It's just a mindset shifts a lot of times. That's all it is.
Yeah,
like nothing physical changed with you.
No, not at all. I mean, yeah, like I said, it was probably like a 10% increase in like, and I mean, obviously my mental attitude towards it, I stopped kind of like being like, oh, practice time, or whatever, like, 6 a.m. training. It was more like, okay, like, how am I gonna, like, who am I gonna beat today, or whatever, like, what little goal am I gonna achieve, or how, and just like, you just build on that.
Yeah,
it's pretty fun.
It's exciting to see or to hear you talk about it, because in your case, in a short order, things were coming together. I mean, when was the first time you beat Rollins in a match, and how big of an impact on that was you?
Oh man, that was wild. It was, we were juniors, so we had, it was like kind of our junior year, like redshirt junior year, and they came to Penn State for a dual meet, and I think at this point at Rec Hall,
wow,
at this point, I had lost, obviously many times to him, but I was just, it was like, this was the peak of like my I was just like feeling confident. I was beating other good guys, and I was like starting to get ranked in the top 10. And it was just like, I mean, that was a whole nother thing. I worked a ton with the sports psychologist to kind of like just get me to the point where I was okay with, like, I didn't think about, I'm this kid that never won states, or never, like, that just walked onto the team, like it was like I kind of had to like give myself permission to achieve what I wanted to. You know, it was like it was a weird mental block almost. But you know, I'm building momentum, I'm beating good guys, I'm getting ranked and feeling good about it. And I think the last time we wrestled, I had kind of closed the gap, you know. It was like he beat me by, maybe he was beating me by 4 points, you know, or 6, something somewhere in there, you know, like that.
Mm-hmm.
I had gone from almost being teched to losing by 10 points to losing by, you know, just this barely a major, and then just kind of like slowly chipping away at it. And yeah, I don't know, like I would just happen to be on that night, you know, and maybe he was having an off night, you know. You never know. I don't
Right.
know.
How'd the match go though? Did you take him down, or was it a high scoring
Oh
affair, or what happened?
yeah. I mean, it was like we were. It was a high score, especially for heavyweight match. It was a high scoring match. I hit him with an inside trip, which was like became my kind of bread and butter. But he was a big underhook guy, so I would just kind of like, in my head, I was like, he's gonna dig this underhook in on the wrong side one time, and I'm gonna hit him with it. And yeah, and I think it shocked him, you know, it shocked him a little bit. And then by the end, and the pace was so high. By the end of the match, I locked up a cradle and like put him on his back. I mean, at this point I was already winning. Like I was kind of like,
Did you break him?
like, hey, I don't know. I mean, maybe, but I just remember like just feeling unstoppable and just like putting him on his back. Like it was kind of like the closing seconds of the match, you know, putting him on his back. And I started telling everybody like, yeah, I could have pinned him, but I held him off. I held him off his back just because I wanted to show him, you know, I just wanted to show him that it wasn't like, I didn't want him to build it in his head that it was a fluke, like he just got stuck, you know?
Wow.
Yeah, it's so funny.
Man.
But from that point on, it was just like, it was a real rivalry, and it was cool. It was really cool. And I mean, it's funny because like, you know, we'd see each other. I wrestled, you know, after college for like in the international circuit for 5 or 6 years, and we'd see each other all the time. And his dad, I'll never forget how much of an awesome guy his dad was. His dad would always be like, "Hey, great match," you know, like we just get done wrestling his son, and he'd be like, "Hey, great match." Like, I think he saw it, you know, way before I did, but like we were making each other better, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And like I to this day am like, man, you know, I think I saw him. I was at the US Open a couple years back, and I saw him. I met a couple of his kids, you know, and I talked to his kids, and you know, he was like, I forget his son's name, but he was like, you know, hey son, like this is this is Pat. He was one of my, you know, one of the guys I used to wrestle with in college. And you remember what Grandpa always says? Because his son is like really good wrestler, you know, and he's
Really?
just kind of like, he's like so much above everybody else. He's like, remember what Grandpa always says? There's always somebody that is targeting you. There's always a target on your back, and there's always that guy that's working hard, and you know, and just like he wants it more than you do. You can't forget that, you know. And I'm like,
Wow.
you know, I'm like, oh man, it's so cool that I had, you know, that like our rivalry like had this impact, and now it's getting passed on to his kids. It was really cool.
That is
And
cool.
you know, and I remember like talking to his son and saying, listen, you know, I know this is your dad, and he doesn't seem like it, but your dad made me the man I am. You know, I'm like, we pushed each other so hard, and we were, you know, like we were enemies, but man, I can't thank him enough. You know, like he's the best thing that ever happened to me, you know?
Wow.
Yeah, it was
That's so
cool.
cool because, you know, like you think of a Tommy Rollins, like that's blue blood of wrestling right there. Like
Yeah,
been
yeah.
killing people since he was probably 8 years old. I'm sure his kid's been killing people since he was 8 years old. Just an athletic, just man, And then yeah, it's cool because someone like you, coming up on the come up, kind of like the Rocky scenario. Now we're also forgetting this is the era of the heavyweights, right? You got John Lockhart, you got Leon Crump, but you also got the great Steve Mocco. Are you getting your hands on the bear at all or no?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
It's just
We had
because he was
we had
out
our
a year.
tussles.
He had a redshirt year. Like he had a couple years where he was kind of. It was. I don't remember exactly how it all played out, but yeah.
Yeah,
How would
yeah.
you
Oh
compare
yeah.
Russell and Mako versus Rollins?
Um, Mako just felt like a big brick, you know what I mean? But like, I mean, obviously he was technical and good, and quick when he needed to be quick, but it was different. It was very, very different. He was like, I don't know, it was like somebody that you knew you didn't go at the head on, but like Rollins was just like, I mean, it was like it was just like a scramble match, like we're getting after it, like we're always gonna be scoring high and taking chances and that kind of thing. But yeah, with Mako was different. It was like wrestling a block. Like he was just like he's hard to move, hard to everything.
Yeah,
But
and
also
his
but it's
kid's
funny.
killing
Like,
it now too.
oh yeah, I
Have you
know.
seen
I
that? His
saw that.
kid just like is like freakishly good. It was
I
not
know.
surprising to anyone, but
I know. And I trained in Florida for a while. When he started a couple years after he started his little club down there. And I ended up like having dinner at his house with his wife and his kids, like meeting
oh,
all the
that's cool.
kids. Like it was cool. And we trained a lot together. He did a little stint in MMA and we trained a lot together, and it was fun. I was just like, wow. It's so weird. You think of these guys as like these are your enemies. These are like I'll do anything to beat this guy,
Mm-hmm.
and like you develop like a hate for him a little bit. And then you realize at a certain point you realize, oh man, these guys are all cool as hell. And like, you know what I mean? Like they're exactly the same as you. It's just
Mm-hmm.
you just got put up against each other. And so like once we dropped all that, it was cool. I was like, man, damn, Steve Mako, like you're awesome. Like it's so fun to
Mako
hang out
is
with you.
those Iowa guys. It's more of a revelation because like Roland's like, yeah, cool ass dude, but kind of always figured he'd be cool. But you meet someone like Mako where like you were actually like as a kid
Oh
really scared of him. You're like, this dude is like he's a goofball, and
yeah. Oh yeah. He
same
was
thing with
awesome.
like Mike Zadek and Metcalf. Those guys, I had them on the podcast, and then afterwards, be like, man, those guys were awesome. Like maybe I should stop thinking everyone's such a nut,
I know, yeah. Like I should stop this whole like Iowa hate thing. Like,
Right. Well, I mean, and back in your era, Midlands was strong, All-Star
yeah.
meet, Big Ten. So, you mentioned you beat Rollins your junior year. You go on and get an All-American medal at the Nationals, take fourth. Senior year, you beat Rollins again at Rec Hall, lose them at the All-Star meet, but then you guys meet up in the NCAA finals. You talked about sports psychologists kind of helping you out. Where are you at like the 10 minutes before that match in the tunnel mentally?
Well, that was a little different story. Um,
What happened then?
we wrestled. I lost him at the Big Ten finals like a couple weeks before that too.
Close or not close?
It was very close. I ended up getting a takedown and getting the lead, and decided there was like 40 seconds left, or like something like some short time left. I decided to cut him and go for a takedown because I was like thinking about, all right, I'm gonna mentally break him because I'm just gonna show him that I can do whatever I want, and this is gonna bleed into NCAA's. And I ended up not getting the takedown, so it was like it really backfired.
Oh wow, you were feeling
Yeah,
really
yeah.
good.
I was like, ah.
So you
But
could
that
have
was
won
just,
that one though, easy, right? I mean, you were winning. I mean, not easy, but you
yeah.
could
I
have
mean,
won.
yeah, I would have had to hang on for 30, 40
Mhm.
seconds, which I probably could have. But
And then NCAA's, you were sick, right?
yeah, that's what it was big. It was a big. There was no real sports psychology, like all that stuff went out the window, like everything. I think I woke up that morning, the morning of weigh-ins at like 3 a.m. and just kind of had this like, I'm like something's wrong, and I'm just like run to the bathroom, puking and like out of both ends, just like, oh, and just like, I was like, oh no, I like called the trainer and I'm like, hey, like I'm just like stuffing Imodiums in my mouth and trying to, nothing worked. I would like, and I, to the point where, getting ready for my first couple matches and just warming, like I'd warm up, I'd start like kind of bouncing around and starting to try to get hot, and I'd start puking. And I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna, like, I mean, I guess I did kind of like sit back and kind of just mentally assess it and just be like, okay, you're fine, and kind of like talk myself through how I was gonna approach the match, and just I was like, I'm gonna slow the pace is gonna be slow, but I'm gonna start, like, I'll get takedowns towards the end of the first period and just kind of hand fight, get myself warm. And I mean, luckily I was able to hold in everything that was going on. And I mean, I slowly eked out wins. It was a rough showing. I mean, I think I had a couple of moments where I just was like, it just seemed, I think to me, it just seemed like I was doing superhuman things, like just like getting in these positions and just needing a takedown, needing whatever it was, and just kind of, like, just like summoning it from somewhere, and just like getting strong and just like getting that, because I just had this goal. I've had this goal for the past four years, of just like, I want to win this tournament. And it just felt like nothing was going to stop me. I kind of built momentum each match, where I was like, man, I felt like crap, but I got it done. And, I had these, I think my semis match was very close, and, but eked it out. And I think I couldn't even, I remember, like, I couldn't even really celebrate. Like, I was just, cause I was bummed, I was just like, I'm better than this. And this is like the time I really need to show it. And this is like, and like, I remember my coach, like, came off the mat, got my hand raised, and my coach is like, like, wait to the fans. What are you doing? And I'm just like, yeah, like, try not to puke, guys. Thanks for the support. And but at that, but then I was like, okay, I have, there's that long break from when you win the semis, you sit that whole night, and then, like, the whole rest of the day, there's that long, wrestle back kind of situation happening, and you wait till the next night. So I was like, okay, and I just kind of like slowly kind of started with self-talk and was just like, okay, I got this, like, I'm just kind of like, I got plenty of time to rest. I can feel better by the time this match rolls around. And man, I just did not. And I was, like, I remember being in the tunnel and just kind of like, again, like, not real warm. And one of my coaches, I mean, he wasn't actually my coach, but one of my mentors, Kerry McCoy, came and said something to me, beforehand. He's like, hey, this is your time, like, blah, blah. But, and everybody was kind of offering me support and whatever, but I think what I really needed was like a game plan. And I think everyone was afraid to give me one because they didn't know what I was capable of. And I mean, it was tough. And I feel like I went into that match with the wrong game plan, but I think no matter what, it would have been the wrong game plan. Like, I was not myself, and I was hurting. But my game plan was, okay, I'm gonna get an early lead, and I'm just gonna go out hard and see what happens, And I probably should have just stalled my ass off and tried to eke out a takedown at the end, or something. But I just got eaten up, and it was really discouraging, because I think for whatever reason, everyone puts that so much emphasis on that tournament and that time. And, I think a lot of people are made and broke in that tournament. And like, for some guys it haunts them, like they just never have a good tournament. They're always ranked high going into it, and they're just, there's some mental block involved in it. So I don't know. It was it bugged me for a long time, really, because I just thought, I remember my coach telling me, hey, if this is the guy you need to beat to be an NCAA champ. And I beat him. You know what I mean? Like, I beat him. I just didn't beat him at the right time. And it just like, oh man, it just like.
How long did it eat at you for?
Oh man, a long time. Longer than it should have. Longer than it should have, definitely. I mean, that's kind of what pushed me. I think if I had been if I had won that match, I think I probably would have just like called it quits with wrestling, been very happy with where I was. And, I think losing that match kind of like sparked me to continue my journey of, like, okay, I'm going to give a shot, try to make the Olympic team, going to train for the next 4 years and, see what happened. And just, I don't know. I think I lost momentum over that time a little bit. It's like, it's a lot of wrestling to do.
It's a lot. And it's at that next level. Back then, that was the doldrums of international wrestling. Like, it was weird rules. Like, there was like,
it
was a tough time for US during that time.
It's funny you say that. I mean, I feel like people don't really, like, people don't understand. I was just like, man, I hated the international rules. It didn't make any sense. So they changed it to win 2 out of 3 periods, 2-minute periods, and like
Ball
the push out became something. It was like there was a takedown was a point and a push out was a point. And I'm wrestling heavyweight. I'm undersized, and I'm just like, man, I'm getting in these sumo matches, and of course I'm not gonna win. Like, I can't hold my ground against these big guys. They're just pushing me out of bounds. Like this, like I hated it so much, and I really lost steam. And I think it was like maybe the next year or so after that, they started changing things.
Yeah.
I missed that window.
We just did a documentary on Henry Cejudo, the wrestling part of his career, and it capped off with the win in 08. But, as part of that, we went back and looked at 07, Henry's first time at the Worlds. No one medaled except DC, and he got a bronze. And you compare that to what we did at the Worlds this year. These guys are like killing people, and it's definitely a surge in talent. The rules are awesome now. The rules back then sucked, but I think even then it was a weird time. I don't know how to describe it. I mean, we had like one medal out of like 2 worlds combined sometimes, so and then after that, I just want to wind down real quick with, you get into MMA, and, being on the senior level for 5 years, you're going to come in with a level of skill. But I just thought it was a cool story the first time you fought DC, how that all came about at the coffee shop. That was freaking nuts. Can you share that?
Great. Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you bring up DC because it was like, in wrestling, because I was like, we trained at the OTC together all the time, and like everybody knew each other.
Yeah.
And
no one was famous, right?
What's that?
No one was famous yet, right? Like, he's not like this big guy. It's just
No, and it's fun. And I remember, I guess a couple years before that, we did Real Pro Wrestling. Do you remember this?
I do remember that. Yeah. Because Joe Williams was my guy, and he was in it. And they did and then Tony Davis was in it too. And they did like little backgrounds on it. But that was like right when I was like middle school, high school, thick into it. And Real Pro Wrestling I remember that. No shirts. The mat was on like a platform. It was weird. Did you do that?
Oh yeah.
You did. Okay.
I won the heavyweight.
Let's go.
We had to wear singlets though. I was so pissed because I was like, man, I'm like the only heavyweight that like looks good with the shirt off. Like, let us do it. Come on.
Right.
Like, they're like, nah, the heavyweights, we're gonna put you guys in singlets. I'm like, what the hell? But yeah.
That's funny. But did you cut down to like that weight though for the freestyle, or did you stay with
I stayed at heavy, and then I kind of like I got fed up with the rules, and then I came back maybe a year or so. I was working with Zach Ray at Lehigh for a few years, and they're like, I kind of lost all that. I had to, I had to push to keep my weight up. Like I was eating a lot, and when I stopped, I just kind of like dropped down to my normal like 220, 225 range, and without trying, without consciously thinking about it, I just was like, I'm so glad I don't have to eat like it's my job anymore.
It was an effort for you to stay up at heavy.
Oh, it was awful. Like everyone would always give me crap about it. It's like, oh yeah, okay, we're all cutting our balls off and you just get to sit there and eat. And I was like, I hate eating. I don't want to do it. Like, imagine never being hungry or just like you're just always being full.
Oh,
And
that
like
is a horrible feeling.
yeah, like go through a college practice like on a full stomach every single day. Like it sucked. Like this just sucked. But yeah, I mean, you think about all those guys from Real Pro Wrestling, like all of a sudden it's like Mo Wall and DC and like, all these guys and Joe Warren, like all these guys just like eventually made their way to MMA and it kind of made an impact. But yeah, I remember, I remember DC. DC was like probably very, he's like one of Kerry McCoy's best friends. And I was Kerry's training partner for 2004 Olympics. And so, so I'd been around these guys so much. And I just like DC just kind of always would treat anybody like, he would treat me like a little brother kind of thing. And I was like, this guy's such an asshole. Like I can't stand him, and I was just like, ugh. And I just remember him being so good but just kind of like not working as hard as me. You know what I mean? And I just kind of like, it irked me a little bit. But I mean, obviously, dude's just has talent coming out of his pores, and but I just, I kind of like made this switch and I've been struggling a real big management team kind of like backing you and getting you fights. Man, it's hard. It's really hard. Everyone will Google your name and do a little research, and like it was just like so hard to find fights. I think I managed to get 4, and I think a couple of those, like I had to forfeit my purse to the guy. I was like, you can take all the money, just fight me.
What?
Like
why? Because of the wrestling and all that. No one would want to do it, huh?
Yeah, everybody's just like, nah, I'm good. I don't feel like, because at that time, I think it was. I mean, I'm probably still the case, but the UFC wanted to see a guy that was 10-0, had some good finishes, and then they'd get their ticket in. So no one's willing to take that tough, like that tough, like wrestling grind fight because it's not going to be exciting, they think, or they're just not going to win.
Right.
So, yeah, I'd been like sitting around. I was staying at my manager's place, and at this time I just got it. Like I'd burned through all my savings, everything I ever made, and it was just like trying to make it. And I was like, I think I need to get a job, and my manager was very against it. I'm just like, dude, I have nothing. Like I can't live like this. I'm crashing at your place already. I can't offer anything to you. I'm like, this is bad. So I got a job. It started at 3:30 in the morning. I would like open the coffee shop and like I did all the baking, like prepared all the baked goods for the shop, and then just like I worked until like 9 or 9:30, and then I'd get to training at 10. And I don't know what it made me think that like I could sustain this. Like it was awful because I'd like I'd train twice. I'd try to nap in between, and then I'd try to go to bed by like 8 o'clock. But it's impossible to do that, And then I'd be up at 3 again, and it was rough.
Sounds horrible.
And I just remember thinking like, okay, I think it's time that I kind of put this dream to bed. I have a college degree. I can get a normal job. Things can be like, it doesn't have to be like this. I think I caught the reflect. Like I would work at the drive-in, um, like the coffee shop had like a drive-in window, and I remember once catching my reflection in somebody's car window, and just I had this little apron on, and I was just like, this is my life. Like, come on, and just think it like that kind of made me feel like, all right, I think it's time to say goodbye to this dream. It's like I can move, I can do something else.
Mm-hmm.
And within, I think like within a week's time of having that thought, this whole first UFC fight happened. And but it was, I mean, a week is a long time. It's just like just kept putting one foot in front of the other and just like refused to quit. Even though I told myself, I'm done doing this. I
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't be doing this. This is silly. And one night before I go to bed, at like super early in the morning at night, my manager's like, oh man, you see, Rashad got hurt against DC and they pulled out of this fight. And I was like, oh, and see, I was like, oh, that's crazy, like what happened? I think he tore his ACL or something. And he was like, what, would you ever fight DC? And I was like, yeah, I've trained with the guy a ton. Like, yeah, I think I could beat him because like I know he does not work as hard as I do. And and like that was kind of my mindset going into it. And my manager was funny because he was just kind of like he was secretly planting this like whole situation. And he's like, well, you should just put a tweet out there. And I'm like, dude, I have 200 Twitter followers. Like, that's not going to do it. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, no, just do it. Like, he kind of like forced me to put a tweet out. I'm like, yeah, I'd take that fight. Nobody wants to take this fight. I'd take it. And so like, I go to sleep. Meanwhile, he like gets this like brainstorm going. He's like, all right. He's like, friends with Ariel Hawani, and like, which I was too. And like, like all these different media outlets. And just like, and I told him kind of the story of us training. DC was like he was getting ready for the World Championships, and we would always do simulation matches. They put us together for one of them, and it was like put the singlet on, and it was just it was like a exactly like a tournament style. They'd have a match every 30 minutes or 40 minutes or whatever it was, and they paired us together for one, and we had this funny match where we were just like no scoring was really happening. We were just kind of like like getting into it, and we were going hard, and we were just like starting to club each other hard, and no takedowns, nothing. And I think at this time it was like 3-minute period, 30-second break, 3-minute period, and no score in the first period. And then I think you go to like a clinch or something like that. If there's no score in the first period, then you start in a clinch the second period, something like that. And I don't remember exactly how, but anyway, he was just getting frustrated, and like anybody would, and it's like pressure's on you. You're just, you're trying to get ready. You're going through this training. I'm just kind of like there as, training.
You got
and
nothing to
doing
lose,
whatever.
bro. You got all
Yeah, I
upside.
have nothing to lose. I'm nothing to lose. And I'm just like, I'm just staying in his face and just whatever. And at one point he just kind of like loses it. Like clubs me a couple times hard and starts like digging in underhooks. And I just like whoop, and like tossed him. Like real like for 5, like bad. and,
Whoa.
and like and there's there was like 30 seconds left in the match, and takes him forever to kind of like collect himself and get back and like come back to the center, and then like whistle blows, fly up again. And I hear him like sniffling and like in my ear, and I'm like, oh my god, he's crying right now, and I kind of, it made me feel bad, because I'm like, I know the pressure of getting ready for, like, I mean, I don't know the pressure of getting ready for the World Championships, but I know the pressure of getting ready for a big tournament. And man, you get frustrated and things suck and whatever. And, you know, I told my manager this story and he was like, okay. And he started sending, you know, calling up all the media guys telling this story. And, you know, then it became like, hey, if you want to get this fight, like you've got to play this thing up where like you made DC cry, you know? And I'm like, ugh. And like, I don't know. I mean, you don't know me that well, but it was just like, I was like, this is like real cringy. Like, I don't think I want to do that, you know? I'm just like, ugh. But I mean, that came later on. But anyway, I'm like at the coffee shop the next morning, super early. I feel my phone kind of like buzzing in my pocket a little more than usual. But I'm busy, you know, serving coffee and making croissants and whatever, you know. And yeah. And my manager busts into the coffee shop and just like starts kind of ranting like incoherently, and he's in his pajamas, like he's in his sweats, and like, you know, he just looked ridiculous. Like he just rolled out of bed and he's like, like he probably tried to call me a bunch of times.
And you're shocked to see him at your work.
And I'm like, what are you doing here? And like nobody, you know, like my boss at the coffee shop had no idea who this guy was and kicked him out. Like we're like, sir, like stop bothering our employees. Like you have to leave, you know? So he's just like gets frustrated, turns around and walks out. And I'm working at the window. He walks around to the window and is yelling at me like over top of a car, you know, like giving coffee to a car. He starts yelling at me. Do you want this fight or not? What is wrong with you? Pick up your phone. You know, I'm like, what? I'm like, I don't understand what you're talking. You know, like I think he thought I was like following this whole like explosion that was happening. I had no idea. You know, I've been at the coffee shop for the past like 5 hours, and I'm like, I turned to my boss. I'm like, hey, like I gotta go talk to this guy. I don't know what's happening, but it must be important. He's not crazy. And she's just like, okay, you know, just clock out. You're done, you know? And I'm like, okay, like, did I get fired just now? You know, like, I don't know. So I like go out back and you know, like he doesn't say anything and just hands me the phone. And I'm like, okay, like, yeah, it's Dana White. He's like, hey, like, is all this stuff true? All like the story I hear true of you guys, you know, you in DC and blah blah blah. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I think if it's, you know, I don't know what story you heard, but yeah, probably. And he's like, are you willing to roll with it? Are you willing to like really play this up and whatever? And I'm like, I guess, you know, like what for what, you know? And he's like, I'm gonna give you this fight if you know. And I was like, yeah, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Like, let's
I'll
go.
kill someone for this fight.
Yeah, I'm in the worst place possible. Yes. Like, what do you tell me what I need to do? I'm doing it.
I mean, literally a day before, if someone would have said, hey, you're about to get a fight with DC in the UFC main event, what would you have said? It's like,
oh, I mean,
impossible.
Like, sure. Yeah. And I think at that point, it was 7 or 8 days until the fight. And
was it a main event?
It was a co-main. Yeah.
And UFC, and you had never had a UFC fight yet. You're on the come up.
No, it was like totally unheard. It was ridiculous. And so
God,
that day, I mean, obviously that day I was up at 3 at the coffee shop. We skipped, I don't know if we may have went to training. I can't remember, but a car came down, picked us up, took us to Fox Studios, and I was live on like, you know, Fox, whatever it was. It was like the fight, whatever show they did in the evenings. I was like live talking trash to DC, like via Skype or whatever, you know, whatever. And I was just like, and we like in the car ride on the way up, we were like, my manager's like, okay, let's rehearse our shit talking, you know? And I'm like, huh? And he's like, these are your points, you know? And we're just like going through it all.
That's so funny.
And I'm just like, oh man, I don't know if I can do this, you know? Like, this is so weird. But I'm like, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. So yeah, let's go. And
that is epic, dude.
It was wild.
The fight didn't go your way, but it opened the door to get in the UFC, and you had a whole UFC career based on that. Like, that's the cool part about it to me, is like was it guaranteed that the UFC would let you stay in and fight after that? Or was it kind of like after you lost that fight, were you thinking, I don't know what's going to happen next? Or they said, hey, you're going to have like 4 or 5 fights?
No, I mean they signed me to a contract, but I mean that doesn't really mean anything. They can end it whenever they want.
Right.
I mean, I guess I wasn't thinking of that at the time, but like yeah, obviously after the loss, I was kind of like, oh man, I knew I kind of did them a solid, and
Hmm.
I kind of resurrected the card a little bit, got some interest in the card, so I knew I'd be okay. They'd give me at least one more, but that next fight, I
That's
was
it.
like, yeah, I was like, I gotta win this fight, and it was good. It was good to kind of have that little pressure on you and kind of get the ball rolling. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, and I think what kept me, I mean, I was in the UFC for 5 years, I think, and what kept me going is like I know that a rematch, like if I worked my way up to contender and got a rematch, like I could get a rematch, like that would sell, and like that was like my goal the whole time. It's like, all
Hmm.
right, if I can, I just gotta get back in there. I know I can win this fight, or I can make that happen. And I had a couple close fights, lost some fights I was winning to some good guys, and it never, it just kind of like set you back. It sets you back a little. It's different than wrestling. It's a
Well,
little
after
different
that
than wrestling.
DC loss, you had 3 in a row. Then you lost to, I think it was OSP. But you got to think if you win that, you're going like real close to that next step. So it's like,
Yeah,
it's tough, man. It's like,
I
but
know.
it's an
Yeah.
amazing story that after Penn State, you were wrestling for 5 years, and then you go into UFC, you go into MMA, you're not gonna make it. They give you a shot, and then boom, you made something out of it. It's like just your story is like one of the craziest ones I've ever heard, man. It's
It's so
awesome.
weird.
It's
It's so weird.
awesome.
And
Yeah.
like people, I tell people like, yeah, I had my very first MMA fight when I was 30 years old, and everybody's like, huh? Now there's kids that are like taking MMA fights and they're 16 years old. And I'm
100%.
just,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm just like, yeah. And
And
I
I don't know
think,
how many college wrestlers there are now who've never heard of Fargo. Like,
yeah, right. I know. Like, what is wrong with
crazy.
me?
Man, it's amazing though, man. And I think you're such a humble guy that you're glazing over. Like everything you read about you is like you're super, super tough and crazy worker. And so like you put that together and obviously you're athletic, it's like, man, you can get a lot done with that. And I think it's the message I get from it is for someone listening, it's like, man, you have a little belief in yourself and you can just go, change the mindset. You can really make things happen.
Yeah, it's true, and that's what makes wrestling one of the best sports there is, especially for kids growing up or whatever, because it automatically translates. Like your
Mhm.
hard work is gonna pay off really fast, and it has to be. You have to have um, that that mental side of it too. You have to
Mhm.
really believe in it, and believe in the work that you're putting in, and it almost always pays off. It's really cool. It's one of the best character building sports there is, and not to mention it's the hardest sport there is. It's so
No
like
question.
I teach a wrestling class for like it's like wrestling for jiu-jitsu and MMA, and it's these guys that have never wrestled, but it's funny because it's like I'm showing them how to do a penetration. It's like stuff I would teach kids.
Right. Right.
And they're just, like just this past week, we finally got to a point where it's like, okay, like I feel good. We got our leg attacks. We got a few leg attacks. We got some defense stuff. I'm like, all right, let's start doing some like live situations. And like all of a sudden they're like, oh, wrestling is hard. Like, yeah, it
Yeah.
sucks. Like, I don't know what you guys are doing here. You guys are like grown men. Why are you trying to
Bro,
wrestle?
it's so you get that's funny you say that. One of my buddies, if you're listening, Michael, he'd never wrestled his whole life. Taller guy, goes into jujitsu, been doing it, just going at it. I tipping my hat to him. It's like I'm unbelievable. And he's like, yeah, we started doing single legs the other day. And he's telling me about it. And I'm like, bro, as like an older, he's in his 20s, like to be learning single legs in your 20s, it's just funny to hear that. But I guess everyone in jujitsu goes through that.
Yeah, and it's become jiu-jitsu's become such a wrestling dominant kind of like
Oh
scene
yeah,
now. It's cool. It's cool to
100%.
watch.
Well, brother,
Yeah.
it's been so fun to talk with you, man. We covered so much ground, and I'm
I
so
know,
glad
right?
Aaron put us in touch, man. But I wish you nothing
Yeah.
but the best, and just want to say thank you for coming on the show. It's been fun.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I had a good time. I didn't know what to expect, but this was cool. Yeah.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Pat.
Yeah.
Have a good one, brother.
Really, you too. Thanks, man.